Warning: this podcast features adult subject matter, adult language, and things not meant for children to hear. Viewer discretion is advised. You've been warned. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of I'm No Joe, the podcast where every armchair quarterback can feel like an Eddie Bravo. Today, I'm joined by my buddy, the one and only Pike himself. Thank you again for being here with me again today, buddy.
No, thank you for having me, my man.
So, what I figured we would do here today real quick, I figured we would run down the last couple of UFC fight nights, well, the two fight nights in the UFC on Fox, since we've got the big fight coming up this weekend, with DJ and TJ both putting their belts on the line. I figured we'd take this time to recap the last couple of fight nights and then the Eddie versus Dustin UFC on Fox.
All right, let's do this, my man.
All right, so first things first, we're going to go back to Boise. Right off the bat, Jessica Aguilar versus Jodie Esquibel. That was a tough fight. It was a close fight. It went to the judges for a reason. In my eyes, though, and I just went back and rewatched all three of these events this morning for a little refresher. In my opinion, Jessica did good, but Jodie was the aggressor. She put the pressure on more. She was more elusive. Her strikes were a little more balanced. Even if Jessica did get a little more on the total number, it felt like Jodie's shots were a little more planned, a little more technical, and they were doing a little more damage, even if it did, go to the judges themselves.
No, I mean, that's why they have the rules the way they do. I mean, it's, how do they come across? It's octagon control followed by striking, effective striking, effective grappling, and then aggressiveness. I think that's how it comes across.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So when it comes to that, you can have octagon control the whole time, but effective striking is gonna just trump that all day. And some fighters rely on that. Absolutely, they really do.
Yeah, I think that this might have been a case of what that was, is that Jodie was in there just cleaning Jessica's fucking clock, but it just from appearance's sake, I can see how the judges might have called that on the striking over the octagon control, maybe.
Well, even some judges just look at, like, everybody's seen bad judging. It happens. And some of the fights we're going to talk about, it happened. And they look at the fighter themselves at the end of the round, and they're like, oh, that person got beat up way more.
True.
That's my feeling on it, is that's what happens. Like, somebody gets bloodied up. I mean, the smallest cut in your face is going to bleed, especially with all those lights on you. Look at, just example, WWE. Whenever they get cut in the face, just a little nick on the forehead, there's copious amounts of blood just coming down your face. And that's what the cutmen are for. They put some pressure, put some Vaseline, depending how bad the cut is, and they can stop the bleeding. And in other cases, you can't stop the bleeding.
True.
But I didn't watch this fight, so I feel bad for having a word in the say of it, but.
Oh, no. But from there, we can move right on down the line. The next fight, I didn't know it at the time, but it was De La Rosa versus Garcia. De La Rosa is actually the husband of Tough 27 finale, Montana De La Rosa, who won her fight on the opening card. It's her husband, and he won his fight on the opening card. So it was like a precedent was set and followed by the husband and wife on their two precedented event showings and winnings right out the gate. I thought that was pretty cool.
I think that's the first time that's probably happened too.
I think it was the first time that a husband and wife both made their debut and won both their debuts simultaneously like that.
No, I agree. I mean, it's cool that those two people can share their love of the sport together and be successful.
I agree.
That's something that'll never be taken away from them, Even if they go 3 and out their next 3 fights and they get cut, they'll always have, like, hey, remember when?
Absolutely, because there are a lot of couples like Smiling Sam Alvey. His wife is in his corner. She does a lot of his management stuff. Amanda Nunez and Nina Ansaroff are training partners and married couple. Tisha Torres and
Tisha
Raquel.
Torres, yeah.
Yeah, there's several couples that are both in or at least have something to do with it. But I think this might have been the first time that husband and wife fighters won back to back like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So next one, I know you said you didn't get to catch this one either. In my opinion, you didn't really miss much. Liz Carmouche versus Jen Maya. This is another one. Like it went to the judges, but in my opinion, this one deserved to go to the judges. Like neither one of those ladies looked like they had any hustle. Neither one of those ladies looked like they had that fire inside of them. And we're talking about two ladies in the top 10 here who are chasing the belt, trying to make their move up for their title shot. And it looked like both of them were just in a Saturday afternoon exhibition match. Like neither one of them really gave a damn. And I don't know. It felt like this, to me, this is definitely one of those cards, or those fights rather, that was on the prelim card for a reason. And it shouldn't have been, but it was.
Yeah, but that being said, you really have no idea how the weight cut went for those girls or women, if you will. And
right.
Everybody has off days. Like some people, you're either on it or you're not. And
right.
They could have both just been off.
Right. But at the same time, the odds of two fighters both having that detrimental of a weight cut, especially when they're already in the top 10, so presumably they should be somewhat, adjusted to that type of a cut.
Well,
seems like
my response to that would be look at Johnny Hendricks. He was a champion for 3 or 4 fights, and then after he lost, he had a problem making weight and had to move up weight class.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's besides the point. I mean, you're professional. They're professionals. They should be ready to fight on fight day.
Right. Well, that and Johnny Hendricks allegedly had a lot more going on than just a weight cut that was giving him issues, too. Those Mexican supplements, if you will, apparently played a whirlwind on his system till USADA got around.
Yeah. Don't trust your management. They come to, hey, take this.
Yeah, no shit. Oh, all right. But moving right along here, the next fight, Khabib's cousin Nurmagomedov versus Justin Scroggins. This is one of those fights, I feel like it was it went to the judge's decision and it shouldn't have, but because it went to the judge's decision, they looked more at the visual aspect of the fight than what was actually being done, because it was a predominantly a grappling and a position attacking and defending fight. There was a lot of wrestling going on, a lot of close quarter combat, a lot of phone booth boxing, and Nurmagomedov he looked it, but I think Scroggins was really the one doing the most work, was putting in the good defense, was getting in his shots when he could, but they gave it to Nurmagomedov again. It's one of those judges things I keep talking about.
Yeah, no, I mean, it could also be the name thing,
Well, and he was with him, too. That was the other thing, is that Khabib came to the ring with him.
Khabib was in his corner.
Yeah, and I wondered because we all know that some of these judges are just shit or garbage. And if they're easily influenced, like there's a couple people that have got stories about talking to those judges after an event about a specific fight, and they had no idea what was actually happening in the fight during the fight. So it's completely plausible that, having that star power of seeing Khabib, the champion, walk out with his brother, or cousin rather, might have been enough to sway him in the end.
And that's why I think they should have retired or actual just fighters being judges. Like, look at announcing. You got DC, you got Dominic Cruz, you got Paul Felder. All these guys are now announcing. They should get fighters in there judging, or become somehow legalized to be a judge, and they know what they're looking at and they know what to look for.
I agree completely, and that's one of those things that it's starting to get kind of talked about a lot more, is that the judging system shouldn't just be the same way that it was for boxing. It should be made of actual either ex-professionals or like current referees, people who aren't actively involved or don't have a stake in the fighting world but have enough knowledge to be able to call out things that the average layperson may not.
Right. No, I agree. I amateur fought and I've helped coach some people. And when you're at ringside, it's a whole lot different than watching on TV or out in the fan. It really is. It's
I believe it.
Different. No, but that was, I mean, that was a good fight, though. I mean, I give props to both men.
It absolutely was.
I mean, I know what Justin Scoggins can do. I've been watching him for a long time, but it was Khabib's cousin. I look forward to seeing him rise in the rankings and basically be Khabib in a lighter weight class.
Yeah, absolutely. He did very much from the way that his style came across, and likewise, I've been a fan of Scoggins for a while now, and the way that Nurmagomedov was putting the pressure on him and trying to kind of twist angles at him constantly, it very much was like Khabib 2.0, like a smaller version. In my opinion, maybe even a little better because he seemed to be willing to get out of the grappling and go back to striking a little more frequently than Khabib tends to.
Yeah, Khabib, he's a grappler's grappler. You know what I mean?
He is. He's a wrestle fucker.
But I know this is off topic, but Khabib does what he's great at, and you can't stop it.
That's true.
And that's why he's so successful.
I agree.
We can talk about that later because the whole Poirier call out, but that'll come later.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So pushing past that one, the next fight almost seemed to me kind of like almost like a bad Xerox copy of that fight, and that was Volkanovski versus Darren Damage Elkins. Elkins is another one of those. I've been following him for a long time. Him and Tim Means, really, in my opinion, they put those fucking close quarter elbows really on the UFC map.
Well, his name is Damage for two reasons. You know, like he puts the damage on you, but he has all that scar tissue in his face because he's taken so much damage. And I think this is why he got the nickname, because he's taken so much damage over the years, and he just pushes forward and grinds.
Yeah, and it never stops him.
No, absolutely. And but he got rocked a couple times in that fight, if I remember correctly.
Yes, yes, he did.
That did not stop him. You know, he gained his wits very quickly.
That's one of the things that, and a lot of people don't realize that's one of the reasons that I love Darren Elkins so much, is not just the fact that he can dish out a lot of damage in a real short amount of time, or the fact that he has got, despite all the scar tissue that opens up fairly easily, he's got a chin made of fucking granite, and that man can take some shots. But
and the move to Team Alpha Male has done wonders for his wrestling. Not to say he wasn't a great wrestler before or his game plan, but to go against all the talent they have there, all it done is elevated his fight game.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I'm saying. The thing that he's got the most of that people underappreciate is his agility. That man, aside from being a damage taker and giver, is just quick in his movements, getting in and out, whether it's into a fucking takedown, going after the single leg, that quick trip and throw, or just a fucking quick 1-2, and then he's off the center line and 3 steps to your left, back on the bike again before you realize it. That guy is just fucking agility in a tiny little fucking wind-up doll almost.
No, that was another close fight that I think the judges messed up.
I agree. And that fight is, like I said, it seems to me like a bad Xerox of that Scroggins Nurmagomedov fight, because both of them were so close that it could have gone either way. But I feel like in both cases that the decision was just a little off in my eyes, at least.
Yeah.
So.
No, 100%, man. I have nothing to rebuttal with what you just said.
So moving right along from there, the next one of the main reasons that I personally was super stoked to watch Boise, the return of Alpha Cat Zingano coming back. Holy shit. That girl, for as long as she has been off and as much shit as she has done since she was in the ring, she looked fucking spectacular. She has not hardly lost a step. And I think with a little bit more training, because she's in a whole new camp now, I think with a little bit more time with those guys, I think her next fight is going to be a serious fucking problem for whoever she's against.
I agree. And some people with the time off, it causes ring rust. I think for her it was a refresher.
I think so as well.
Her kids, I think 3 or 4 years old, some good mommy daddy time at home.
Yep.
I think it rejuvenated her. You know, she realized what she's fighting for.
Well, and I think a combination of taking the time off with the kid and then going to the new camp, she's in her old ways of fighting, but she's in a whole new set as far as training in this particular camp. And she said that the change-up that she got from this camp wasn't a complete, start from scratch session, but it was a new enough thing of what she knew that it kind of got her brain sparked and rolling again back into that early mode that she was alpha cat.
No, I agree. Absolutely.
Okay, and then after Alpha Cat's crazy fucking 3-round brawl, Chad fucking Mendes versus Miles Jury. Like, Miles Jury's another one of those dudes that's long and lean and that'll catch you with a fucking elbow out of nowhere that I've been a fan of for a hot minute now. And Chad Mendes, even though he did enough to put that dude down, he looks so drastically different now compared to before both Conor put him down and USADA started showing up, because he's another one that's had rumors about those Mexican supplements that are in his fucking medicine cabinet. And now all of a sudden, after USADA shows up and then Conor put him to fucking bed, his whole physique has changed, and it seems like his whole style has changed now.
No, I agree. Mendes, he did look great in what is it? I don't know if you watched the Tuesday Night Contenders series, but Team Alpha Male had acquired a new wrestling coach not too long ago, and he actually fought Nick Newell. And
nice.
I'm losing my train of thought. The new wrestling coach hadn't fought for about 2 years, came in and he dominated Newell for 3 rounds. But I think his implementation of the wrestling skills and knowledge that he has changed the whole alpha male mentality with how they go about their fighting.
Nice. And, as much as everybody wants to hate on alpha male, and granted, they do bring a lot of that on themselves for the shit that they talk, as much as people want to hate on them, they really do legitimately have a good camp up there for the sake of the camp.
I mean, they have a lot of big names there.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that, too.
And they have a lot of up-and-comers coming out of that camp as well.
Absolutely.
I'm not a huge follower of the California fight scene, but I know the majority of it are Team Alpha Male prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
I go on tangents. I apologize.
You're good, brother. You're good. So the next one, holy shit, I don't understand how this isn't still getting like ESPN fucking highlight reels played of it. That Nico Price hammer fist.
I'll never forget this fight.
Yeah, that fucking Nico Price hammer fist from an upside down triangle.
Not only was he hammer fisting, but if you watch, he had his foot hooked in old boy's head, and as he hammer fisted, he was bringing his foot in, so it was pressure from both sides.
Yeah, so he was catching him.
Yeah, so which is why I believe he got knocked out after 3 hits, because it was like 1, 2, 3, and that third one, old boy was out.
Yeah, you saw the lights just click and the whole thing just kind of shut down on him, but that might have been one of the greatest stoppages, and he knew exactly what he was doing because he stopped as soon as homeboy dropped and just looked at the ref like, yo.
Well, he saw homeboy's whole body weight go limp on him.
yeah, definitely.
And that is not a position that normally the bottom guy is dominating from.
Yeah, it's definitely generally not advantageous to be on the bottom in that situation.
No, again, like I said, that'll be a fight I never forget. That knockout, I remember watching it, and I was like, holy shit. That just happened. Yep. and Nico Price went a little off the rails. He's like, I'm dangerous from everywhere. Don't ever count me out. And it's like, not that he got lucky, but I think
I agree.
He did the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, I agree. If he had, like, his last 3 fights in a row had finishes like that, I think then it would have warranted that I'm dangerous from anywhere speech. I think this might have been one of those situations like I had talked about a couple episodes back where he was so fucking pumped up with adrenaline when that microphone got put in front of him that he just kind of, like, went WWE for a minute on it.
Yeah, and that seems to be the trend. And I also believe that's your time and place to do call. Like when you get that mic put in your face and they're like, "What do you want next?" and the humble guys are like, "Hey, I'll do whatever the UFC tells me to do." That's not going to get you a title fight. You know what I mean? And
Very true.
Stipe Miocic is a prime example of that. For the longest time, he had no voice in the octagon, and once he started talking shit and was like, "Hey, this is my time. I'm here for the title," he got a title shot. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
right.
when that mic's in your face, adrenaline will make you say some things that you look back and you're like, "Man, I can't believe I said that."
Right.
Or they don't remember what they said because they were so hopped up on adrenaline.
Very true. So, ironically enough, that fight that had both of us and, thousands and thousands of fans on the edge of our fucking seats was immediately followed by Glenn versus Bermudez, which might have been the most snooze-worthy, boring fight I have seen in the last 10 fucking years.
And
How
really,
Dennis Bermudez,
Glenn doesn't have fights like that normally.
Well, neither does Bermudez. Like, in the last 5 years alone, I can't think of a boring Bermudez fight. There have been some odd ones, but never a boring fight like that.
I can't remember which is his last fight, but I remember the last fight I saw Bermudez in, he got knocked out. That might have been his last fight. I can't remember, but I think if that was, that's probably why he fought the way he did, because he was afraid of getting put to sleep again.
I think that absolutely has a lot to play in it, and I think I remember the fight you're talking about, and if that's the last one that I'm thinking of, he got clipped going cocky, and then dropped.
He went face down.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that might have been a part of playing it, and I think if you think back about it, that seems to be the going trend here in the UFC lately. And a great example of that on another scale is Ngannou. Because he was the guy who fucked everybody up. He sent Overeem into fucking orbit, and then he went up against Stipe.
Talk about boring fights, my man. That Derek Lewis and Ngannou fight, that was more boring than watching Ray Glenn and Bermudez go at it.
Well, look at what Ngannou did right before Stipe. He sent Overeem into fucking orbit, and then Stipe worked him like a part-time job for a full 5 rounds and fucked him up a couple times real hard. And all of a sudden, Ngannou's not this steam train that he used to be, just putting hands on everybody and hurting him, because he caught Stipe a couple times, and he walked right the fuck through it.
I would bet money Ngannou's next fight is a complete opposite.
And that's one of those things that he actually made a fucking what do you call it? A big Twitter tribute thing right after the fight. He made this big like Hallmark card with a giant spiel on it about how this is not him. The next fight will be the complete opposite, that he took too much of the previous loss with him into this fight.
I know we're on a tangent again, but Derek Lewis is in those chump. Derek Lewis is a brawler. He has power. If you get into a fucking brawling match with Derek Lewis, he's going to clip you and he's going to drop you. You know what I mean?
But at the same time, just like Francis, he's got no fucking gas tank either.
But he's been working on that. Like he took some time off before this fight. He took, I think, 6 months or 8 months or so. And he's another way. He's like a Roy Nelson. He's got that big old belly, but boy can fight. And I think cardio is one of the things he's been working on. And the next fight, Derek Lewis, obviously he won, so he's going to go up and he's going to fight higher.
Yep, I agree.
Which I wouldn't be surprised if you see Derek Lewis versus JDS.
You know, that wouldn't really be a bad fight in my opinion, because that gives Lewis a chance to try and put a veritable name on his belt.
A former champ, if you can beat a former champ, that's again. That's big.
Yeah, it is.
And that gives JDS, if he can win, the proving ground of saying, "Hey, I just beat this guy who's in the top 5."
Very true. Very true.
So let me try and get my belt back. We're on tangents all left and right.
We are. All right, so dialing back here. The next fight after that fucking snooze fest of a Bermudez nightmare, Super Sage.
It was a great fight. I would call this a great fight.
Absolutely. I think that's what Sage needed.
Super Sage came in and got clipped.
Yeah.
And in his post-fight interview, he was like, I wasn't hurt. Motherfucker, you were almost knocked the fuck out, but you recovered quickly.
Yep. Absolutely. Like he got it, but I was arguing with the commentators during most of that because they kept talking about how great Northcutt looked doing this and how great Northcutt looked doing that. And then, like you said, he was getting clipped cleanly. Granted, he was given as well as he was getting, but he was getting clipped left and right like he didn't mind. Well, that shit still adds up, man.
Hey, I'm on my backtrack. Here's another fighter that switched to Team Alpha Male, and he's the largest guy, I think, in their camp. And it has done dividends for his career by switching to a team with such experience. Not just letting your daddy train you, but going to a team where your dad takes the back seat and you have experienced coaches, you have former champions teaching you and showing you, hey, this is what the deal is. And I think that made a huge difference in how he won that fight.
Well, and tied directly to that, that's actually one of the things that a lot of people have been saying about the guy that he was brought into Alpha Male originally to replicate, and that's Wonder Boy. Because Wonder Boy, just like Sage, has always been trained by his father, and after the 2 decisions against fucking Woodley and then this mediocre showing last time out, a lot of people are saying, like, yo, maybe it's time to let your dad take a fucking backseat and go get an actual camp where there's, an entire team of people, not just your dad and his buddies who are putting you through the paces for the camp.
I won't comment on the 2 Woodley fights, but I feel like Wonder Boy, he fought the fight he should have against Till.
Yep.
But when Till clipped him, that's all the judges needed to see was like, all right, you won the fight. That was the biggest strike of the fight.
And it was at home, too, for Till.
Right. That's huge.
Yeah, that combination.
But now you see, I mean, shit, as soon as that fucking bell rings, fucking Colby Chump Covington is going to get stripped of his little title. And it's either going to be Tyron or Till. And I believe Till is going to be the bigger, stronger man, and I think he's going to take that fight.
I agree very much, and it makes me happy on 2 fronts. One, because it's going to get Woodley's whiny ass out of the championship seat where he needs to be removed for a while now. And 2, it's going to take that little fake piece of ego boost right off of Colby's fucking shoulders and put him back in the line with the rest of the fucking window lickers where he belongs.
Well, if you look, Darren Till's a light heavyweight. I'll tell you that straight up. That guy should be fighting at 205.
Yes, he should. Easily. Well, they were talking about it. With no fights on the horizon, when he's just walking around in between camps, he walks around at 210.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
So, yeah, for him cutting all the way down there, I agree.
Yeah, no, I mean, when one person says, I want to be a multi class champion, like Darren Till says it, I actually believe him.
Yeah, he's definitely got the possibility.
I believe he can go to 85 and he could win a title.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't know if he can go all 3 at one time, which is what his goal is, but there's no doubt in my mind that he could move up in weight because all he's going to do is gain more power. That less of a weight cut he has to make.
That's true. That's very true.
He's going to be faster. He's going to be stronger. He's going to be
more
meaner.
gas tank.
Yeah, he's going to be meaner which is, I guess, my way of saying gas tank because there's no I'm searching for a word. He's going to be a better fighter with the less weight he has to cut, which that happens with everybody. I mean, that's just the way the fighting world is. You cut weight because you want to be the bigger, stronger fighter in a certain weight class. You're going to lose some assets.
Absolutely. Okay, so last card event, the main event of Boise, JDS versus the madman who's been stabbed in the heart and came back to keep fucking fighting. Now, I will give the utmost respect for that man because when he got literally stabbed in the heart, he held a press conference from the hospital after he was in a coma for 83 days and said, "This injury won't stop me. I'll be back." And then this night, he got to fight Junior Dos Santos, for fuck's sake. So props for climbing back from a fucking bad situation.
Yeah, a lot
but
of guys that'll end a lot of careers. I mean,
that'll end a lot of lives.
I've never been stabbed in the heart, but I would say that'd take a huge effect on my life.
Right.
And you can tell fighting is his life by coming back. Well, being the champion in World Series of Fighting, if I believe, is
Yeah, that's where he came over from.
And to do that, I mean, I know he didn't. I think the quote unquote bright lights of the UFC kind of fucked him up a little bit.
I agree.
But he got his feet wet, and I think the next fight he has, he's going to dominate in how he actually fights, and he'll be moving up the rankings very quickly.
Like this was a love-hate fight for me. I love to see him in there, and he definitely gave JDS a fucking handful. That's for sure. But at the same time, do you really want your fucking introduction to the UFC world to be JDS?
No, I wouldn't.
That's a horrible first fight to make for anybody just coming into the organization. You know, World Series of Fighting champ or not, that's a bad first fight to make. And I agree. I think the next time he steps in the octagon, as long as it's not against JDS again, I think he's going to have that experience kind of flash through to him, and I think he's going to get right into where he needs to be.
JDS came off a big layoff for this fight.
It's very true.
But again, I think this is just like going back to Cat Zingano. For him, I think it was the same deal. You know, he had a son. He's a happy father. You know, they showed the whole little being a dad, and I think that really is a big deal to him. You know, to be a father and to know what he's fighting for. So,
well, and like you said with Zingano, he also changed camps with the kid as well. So he did the exact same thing. Had a kid, took time off, changed camps, and then came back and looked great, just like Zingano.
It was a good fight. I wouldn't say it was boring, but it wasn't. It didn't have you on the edge of your seat.
I agree. I think it was kind of a tune-up fight for JDS in that he knew that Ivanovsky wasn't going to be ready for his caliber of fighting, and on the same token, if he somehow clipped JDS and was ready for him, that's going to vault you into the UFC. So,
absolutely.
I can see both sides of it, but it was still a great fight for what it was.
That was a pretty good card. That was what, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, 3 weeks ago.
Man, time flies.
Yeah, I'm telling you, especially when, like now, we've got UFCs every weekend, and we've got, another great one coming up this weekend as well.
This has been a great summer of UFC fights. There's no doubt in my mind that this has probably been the best summer of UFC fights I've watched in a very long time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, real quick, I want to talk about Hamburg for just a second here. Weird stacked card. Really, the only two fights that I want to talk about on the whole thing are Glover versus Corey Anderson.
Like Smith and Hua.
And Smith and Hua. Like Corey versus Glover. Like, I get it. You won, but really to call out DC, like I'm ready for my title shot.
Well,
come on.
That came out even before the fight happened. It was like DC was calling out Glover Teixeira, like, hey, you should get the next title shot. So, and in my mind, if Corey Anderson beats Glover, and I can see, like, I kind of agree with Corey Anderson on this one, just because it's like he got looked over, and that's a huge backhanded compliment. You know, it's like you're not going to win this fight. Glover Teixeira, he's been waiting in line long enough. And Corey Anderson, I think this is a night where Glover Teixeira had an off night because Corey Anderson dominated Glover Teixeira in grappling, which
should never happen.
It blew my mind watching that fight. I was like, holy shit, I can't believe this was happening.
Yep.
And Teixeira just looked off. And, I mean, not to make excuses for the guy because, I mean, I can't do that. I don't know him. We're not on speaking terms. And Glover Teixeira is one of those guys, even after the fight and he lost, he took an interview being like, hey, this wasn't my night. You know, like I have to rewatch this fight and see what happened and take a step back and to go forward. And that's what I love about Glover Teixeira, because he's a real person when it comes to that.
Absolutely. And to that extent, literally on my cheat sheet of notes that I make for the fights here, next to Glover's performance, I literally wrote, meh. It wasn't a great performance for him. And that's what I meant by, like, really calling the DC out for the title shot, because it's not that I don't think Corey deserves it. Corey's a badass, and he's proven that time and time again. What I mean by that is I don't think – go ahead.
I think Corey Anderson cannot be DC.
Yeah. But even aside from that, I don't think that DC was sincere or genuine in saying that Glover deserves the title shot. Like, granted, he's been around, he's had some victories, but I don't think if you look at his last 5 fights in a row, any one of them will stand out as enough to say title shot worthy.
Glover hasn't had a title shot, period.
Right. And you can see why in his performances.
DC beat Anthony Johnson, who knocked out Teixeira in a matter of minutes.
Yep.
You know, but Glover's got hands and he's got grappling skills. So, I mean, DC's been shown that he can take a punch, but I don't know if I'd want to get punched by Glover. You know what I mean?
Very true. Very true. When he catches you with a step in.
When he's on his game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
When he's got his Shuto style and he gets that step in fucking bull charge shot that just puts dudes to sleep. He's got a highlight reel full of those.
The short, clean right hook.
Yeah, he steps through it and catches you with it at half point and just goes through you with it.
Which, talking about Shuto fighting, I knew this was going to happen. The Anthony Smith fight.
Yep.
I just knew it was going to happen. In my heart, I was like, Anthony Smith is going to win a knockout in the first round.
Yeah, and it's one of those, I'm right there with you. As soon as I heard that was set and it was confirmed, in my heart of hearts, I was like, no, why would you sign up for that? Shogun, don't do it. Don't do it.
Well, no, Anthony Smith, another guy who this has already been said, but when he was fighting at 185, that's too big of a weight cut. I'm pretty sure Anthony Smith walks around at 230.
Yep. And you saw.
What was it? Who did he fight? Rashad Evans.
Yeah, he retired Rashad. Literally, Rashad got out of there and said that night he would rather never fight again than have to fight someone as strong as Anthony again.
And did you see the look on Rashad's face after he knocked out Hura?
Yeah.
Rashad had his look on his face was like, I know that feeling.
Yeah, like I told you guys, like, you see what happened there? That's why I quit.
No, Anthony Smith is on his game. You know, he's on his ride right now. He's in a stroll. Like, going if he gets to fight against Alexander Gustafson's out, so that fight's not happening.
Yep.
But if he would have fought Gustafson, that would have been a great fight.
That would have been very interesting, man. That's a real close call.
Fight a guy bigger than you, who's had championship experience, who probably actually should have beat John Jones, but the judges went with Jones. You know what I mean?
But the opposite side of that, Gus is really set in his ways. Like, granted, he trains differently every camp, but his fighting style is the same now as it was 10 years ago. Smith is that new school up-and-comer. Everything is fast switch. Everything is step-off. Everything is 1-2 with an off combo. Nothing is standard. Nothing traditional. I think stylistically, he's going to be a problem. Yeah. I think realistically, he's going to be a problem for a lot of guys that are in that old-school mindset like Gus is.
No, I mean, that would have been a great fight to watch, and that would have been the week after next. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, oh, man, that would have been a great fight. The money I would have paid to be ringside for that fight.
Yeah, no kidding, brother. No kidding. So, realistically, that's all the Hamburg that I even really feel like talking about, like those two, the co and the main. From there, we can jump straight into this last weekend in Calgary. And I know that you said you didn't get to catch it, but the opening fucking fight, Nina Ansaroff versus Randa Markos. I think that very much like we were talking about a minute ago with the Nurmagomedov fight, I think that had a lot to do with the name power more so than it did the actual fighting power, because I watched that fight. That was the last card that I watched this afternoon, game prepping to make sure all my thoughts were still on point. And Randa Marcos was more aggressive. She had more control. She had more striking. But for whatever fucking reason, they gave it to Ansarov.
Yeah, the first fight I saw on that card, because we were supposed to do a podcast that day, was the Dustin Ortiz fight.
Yep.
And I caught the back end of that fight and watched Dustin Ortiz lay a fucking nice head kick and get a nice finish, which was very impressive. And that just shows the skill set of that wrestler. I'll say it just like that wrestler, because everybody knows Dustin Ortiz is to take you down and ground and pound you until he wins the fight. But
well, they did previously.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Papa got a brand new bag now.
No, absolutely. No, but then speaking of wrestling,
that's right.
Going to Alexander the Great versus Oben Mercier.
That's right. The very next fight, the Canadian gangster steps in against Alexander the Great, and holy shit, talk about a wrestler showing off a skill set that doesn't involve wrestling while using his wrestling the entire fight. The Canadian gangster, man.
I got a question for you. I didn't catch the weigh-ins. Did you catch the weigh-ins?
I did not.
All right, because I know Mercier usually brings a gift to all of his opponents, and most of his weigh-ins, he gives a gift. I was going to ask you if you saw a gift he gave.
No, I didn't. I didn't even think about that. That's a good point.
That's besides the point, I suppose. That's just something I think is very interesting, because I just think it's very classy of him. You know, like he's a well-rounded fighter who deserves to be in the top 15, and just he had the wrong fight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and to that same point, he's the guy that, look at the vast majority of his fights in the UFC have almost all been short notice fights. He's one of those guys that when Dana says, hey, we're fucked, somebody drops out, he went, I'm here. I got this. Like, where do you need me to be and what date do I have to be there? When do I need to be there for fight week?
There's no doubt this dude lives for fighting. Like, he's in great shape. He has a phenomenal physique. But then during this fight, if you look across the octagon, you found somebody who was in better shape and who had a better physique.
Yeah, that dude was just a little hungrier, and you could tell they both wanted it. But man, was fucking Alexander.
Never am I a guy to be like, oh, that guy looks stronger. He's going to win the fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But in this case, that was the case. The guy that looked better won the fight, but he won the fight through his skills, not just by being a better athlete.
Absolutely. And it was one of those, like, it wasn't ever a one-sided fight. Like, it went back and forth the entire duration because both of those dudes are so fucking skilled that neither one could ever really truly dominate the other. It was just who had the advantage at that particular moment.
Nope, I agree. And like I was talking to you earlier, if you blinked during this fight, positions change. Like, Mercier was on top, and then you blinked, and you're like, how the hell are you on the bottom? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's exactly what I mean, is that there was never any pure domination by either fighter. They were both so equally matched in both, or in all of their skill sets, rather, when they were going head to head, that it was just a constant teeter-totter, and it was entertaining as hell to watch.
No, absolutely. It was a great fight. That was a fight that if you've never seen, if that was your first fight that you ever watched in the UFC, then you're going to be like, holy shit, like, is this every fight? Like, do these guys go back and forth like this?
Yeah, no shit. If that was your first one, that would definitely make you a fan of fighting, in my opinion. Or of the UFC, rather.
No, true. I mean, or fighting in general. I mean, I've met a lot of people who, I put it this way, I've been to a lot of bars where people don't know what the fuck they're talking about watching the fights. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and, guys who think they know fighting.
All you hear is, kick him! Knee! No. But they don't know what a proper switch is or shit. They don't even know what a whizzer is. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I'm going on a tangent again. I'm sorry.
You're all good, dude. You're all good. But speaking
Great
of
fight.
holy shit fights, following the Canadian Gangster, we had the return of the Boogie Woman versus the Tiny Tornado. Holy shit. You want to talk about an unpredictable fight.
Yeah, and that fight was back and forth.
The whole time, and even DC said multiple times that he couldn't believe Torres was making Joanna clinch. Joanna spent the majority of the fight trying to get out of the clinch and break away and hit. And then when Torres started really, really laying it on, Joanna started instigating clinches just to grapple, not even to get a knee or a position change.
I feel like if that was a 5-round fight, Torres might have been able to pull it off. Even
I
though
completely agree.
Even though Joanna won the 3-round fight unanimously, I feel like if that was a 5-round fight, that would have been a different fight.
Well, and to that point, I feel like had that been a crew of 3 ex-fighter judges rather than the 3 judges we got, that would have been a Torres victory as well.
Yeah.
She had Joanna in trouble several times throughout that fight, but Joanna would make the one big flashy moment, and it would win her the round. But I think if we had some fighters or referees even that were judging that fight and saw how many times Torres would hurt her and then step back to keep from that desperate Joanna switch catching her, I think Torres won that fight realistically.
No, I agree 100%. Especially in the 3rd round, it was really showing that Torres was the fresher fighter.
Oh, yeah, and the crisper striker at that point as well, too. Joanna just literally started looking sloppy, like she was falling apart at the seams.
Pretty much. I'm excited about this next fight because I thought it was going to go a different way.
So
100%. I thought Aldo was going down.
My wife came home and walked in, and I've got this going on my computer. I've got it going on my TV. I've got, updates going on my phone. Like, I'm watching every aspect of these fights. My wife comes in as this fight starts, and, she's not paying attention for the walkout. She doesn't give a shit about the music or the scorecards or the tail of the tapes, rather. And then as the fight starts, she kind of it caught her attention, and she sat down and started watching. And that fucking body shot, I watched her just go, wait. And about the time she said the word wait, beneath Jose fucking Aldo. Now, Connor might have fucked his head up for a hot minute, but I think he's shaking that out finally.
Because he is back.
That Jose Aldo, and granted, as it happened, they called it and said that if Stevens tests Aldo's ego like Holloway did twice in a row, he'll stand and bang. And as they said that, he did it. But you saw him switch it up, and that fucking body shot out of nowhere, and the perfectly delayed movement of Stevens' face crumpling.
His face crunched, and then he goes, and that was it.
Undeniable liver shot, man.
I don't know if anybody's ever been hit with a liver shot. I have
as well. My wife immediately went, why'd he stop like that? And I went, he got hit in the liver. And she went, well, it looked like he just punched him in the body. And I went, no. A regular punch to the body would either be on a hard side or right up center. That was just offset enough. That one and the delayed timing of the on his face, that was a liver shot.
This makes me go back to Bernard Hopkins versus Oscar De La Hoya.
The stagger.
De La Hoya got hit with a body shot. Same thing happened.
Yep.
And he dropped to the ground for the 10 count. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Loses the fight. At about 12, 13, 14, he was back up walking around. And that's all it takes. So you got to think those 15 seconds that Aldo put the fucking flurry on after all the toxins in your body are being expelled into you, and you're paralyzed is the word I would use.
Yeah, you're shut off without the option to reboot, basically.
Yeah, your mind's going, saying, do this, do this, do this, and your body's going, nope, nope, nope.
Nope. Yeah, your body goes into turtle mode instantly, and you saw that as Stevens, and DC even called it, as Stevens rolled over onto his belly without his hands up, just face down to the fucking canvas. That's when they jumped in, and they're like, "No, dude,
that's the position you can't be in." I mean, he had control of one hand. I feel like if the referee wouldn't have stopped it, I feel like Stevens might have made a comeback, but that's not what happened. You know what I mean? The referee saw enough.
Yeah, I think there was definitely a potential if they would have let it go, but I think at the same time, at the angle that he jumped in to stop it, if he wouldn't have jumped in, as he rolled over onto his stomach, he left that whole side of his face open to Aldo with the other one against the canvas, so he had a clean shot to just be hammer-fisted straight down on. 2 or 3 of those real quick from Aldo, and you're going to sleep when you're already laying against the floor.
Absolutely.
So I think the ref really saved Stevens from going to bed completely.
That would be a great fight to see ran back. I know that's not going to happen because it's not good for either of their careers to run that back right now.
Right.
But that would be a great fight to be ran back and to watch again.
I agree. But realistically, you would have to at least wait and do it again this time next year. And the way that this organization's been running, there's honestly no telling if Aldo's going to be here this time next year.
True. You never know what happens.
Exactly.
You never know if another company decides to throw some more money at your face and you switch lanes.
And give you the option to let you take those Brazilian supplements that'd make you big and beefy again without asking questions because there's no USADA in other organizations.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Right. How do you do's? No. It absolutely was a great fight. But speaking of gentlemen who have changed their physique without their pre-USADA supplements, Eddie Alvarez versus Dustin Poirier, the run back, as we would say, was a hell of a fight unto itself.
Oh, that was a great fight. That was definitely that's a fight I could watch over and over again.
Well, and I think, ironically enough, as they showed the first fight in the intro before they came out to this fight, a lot of it really looked similar. And I know Eddie tried to talk all that shit about he gave up. No, he didn't, dude. He was putting it on Eddie's ass the first time. And then sure enough, when they ran it back, he put it on Eddie's ass again. I really don't think it would be any different if we ran that one back a third time. I think we're going to get that same result, maybe not to that great of an extent, but I think Poirier stops him again. It's just Eddie doesn't have what he used to have anymore.
This fight, I know I already told you this, but the finishing sequence to this fight, my wife was like, as I was yelling on TV, she goes, "You know we can't hear you, right?"
I get a lot of that. I understand.
And I'm yelling. He's got his kids. I'm yelling, "Knees, knees!" He grabs him by the neck and he throws 2 knees. Then I'm yelling, "Elbows, elbows, elbows!" And then finally he throws that head kick first, and then he throws an elbow, which ended the fight.
The head kick kind of was a little unnecessary because it was sloppy and it went right over him. But I get where he was coming from with it.
He was just trying to finish the fight, you know?
Yeah, he was throwing something at him at that point.
But I'm yelling elbows for 10 seconds, and finally he hits him with that, it was, I believe, a left elbow, and drops him. And, oh, man, that was a glorious finish. Like looking at Alvarez's face all busted and bruised and swollen, and the doctor's like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm okay. This sucks." Like,
yeah, and he's just got blood running down. Yeah.
Oh man, but then Poirier, he was right. I mean, those last 4 fights have been against former champs, whether it's in the UFC or not.
True. It's
You
true.
know what I mean? And I think he is the next line. Should get a title shot. Do I think he has enough to beat Khabib? Probably not. Will it be a good fight? It'll be better than watching Al Iaquinta get in the ring with Khabib.
Right.
That's for sure.
Well, and the problem is that Dana has already said that Khabib and Conor is the next one to happen, which I agree it needs to, because they should have realistically never taken that belt from Conor. So I
True.
agree that Conor versus Khabib, especially after the whole Dali incident, that needs to happen next. That's beyond old blood grudge match. That has to fucking happen. But I think while that's happening,
Khabib was in the bus like, let me out. I'm going to go beat this motherfucker up.
Oh, no, he wasn't. Have you seen Al Iaquinta's video? Al Iaquinta was on Instagram Live when that happened. Guess who was directly over his shoulder?
Oh, well, Khabib said otherwise.
No, there's video, brother. Google it after we get done here. Al Iaquinta is sitting with his phone here, and he, like, pans so you can see Conor, and then he cuts back so you can see Al, and Al goes, ooh, and you see directly over his shoulder is Khabib and his cornermen. Khabib is fucking terrified, and his cornermen are hiding him human shield style.
No shit. Like
Khabib, he could talk all he wants. You can see the video. Khabib was fucking terrified.
That's fantastic, because I watched the interview with Khabib where he was like, let me out. You know what I mean?
No. So what I think just to make it that much more icing on the cake beautiful, on the Conor Khabib card, Dustin versus Tony for #1 contender. Winner gets the winner of Khabib Conor.
I see Tony winning that fight.
But at the same time, how can you deny Tony? Tony was originally going for the belt against Khabib. He had the interim belt, tripped during fight week.
Yeah,
and he's already almost back to ready.
I think Tony and Dustin would be a good fight for a Khabib. Like maybe a co-main. You know what I mean? Like
that's what I'm saying. Make it the co-main of Conor and Khabib. Make it Dustin Tony. So it literally lines up. No matter how it shakes out, it lines up your next 2 to 3 fights.
Winner gets winner.
Yeah, exactly. It lines your division fights up for you. Nobody has to talk shit to call the next fight. You already know what's happening based on how this turns out.
But you don't know how contracts are written up, whether in your contract you get automatic run back. You know what I mean?
Right. Very true.
But
no.
That would be logically it makes sense as how it should be.
I think it would be fun, if nothing else. And in a time where it seems like the WWE is very much orientated towards big draws and money draws and, fun cards more so than legitimate rankings, I think that would be one of those stacks to help ensure that you're going to sell every single possible pay-per-view that you possibly can.
No, I agree. I mean, who wouldn't who wouldn't buy, like, if it was in your town or in a state next to you, why would you not buy a ticket to that fight?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, this was fun.
Well,
I'm all amped up, ready for Saturday.
I was just gonna say, and now that we're both all worked up talking about fights, we're out of fights to talk about for the evening. So I am gonna try and put another one of these together and see if we can get a bigger crew together, so we can get maybe an early Saturday talk together about what's going on Saturday. But I don't want to get too much into it just in case we can. But holy shit, Saturday's card is going to be insane as well.
I'm right there with you.
All right. So, Pike, I am going to say thank you for coming on here and talking some shit with me this evening. I had a great time. I really hope you did as well. Let the people know where they can find you, man.
Instagram, PIKESKA_MSM. Pikeska_MSM on Instagram. That's me. It's in a nutshell. Nothing too crazy. Maybe some, if you follow Foos Vapes or know who that is, maybe you'll get some belly shots of me making fun of women modeling. That's about it. Guys with bellies. tooting their boobies. You know what I mean?
And I'll make sure to drop the link for your channel down there in the description form as well. But we're going to call that all.
Appreciate that.
Thank you again for coming on, brother.
Hey,
Ladies and gentlemen, we're calling that all for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, don't let ignorance stop you. You can root for anything. Have a great night, folks.